We are Fandom Roulette.
Two nerds with a passion for
History,
video games,
tabletop games,
and, well, really any nerdy stuff that comes into our lives.
While we might not be able to name every ship classification in Star Wars,
Or every Pokemon.
or every spell in the player's handbook,
Well, one of us can.
we're still here to have a good time. Alright, hey everyone, welcome to Fandom Roulette. This is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And on Fandom Roulette, this is a podcast where we talk about a myriad of nerdy things, including history, video games, tabletop role-playing games, and other games along those same lines, and whatever nerdy stuff we've been into at the time of recording. Yeah, that was a nice, clean intro.
Yeah, that was super clean. Loved it.
Yeah, all right, it was great. Hey, Cody, what nerdy stuff have you been up to, my dude?
3 words.
Whoa.
Waifu simulator. That's 2 words, but it's there.
I was waiting for the third one.
Yeah, no, I'm playing Fire Emblem 3 Houses. That's why I said 3 words. And it's so good. I love it. I was skeptical because I'm not a big Fire Emblem fan.
Okay.
I started playing them like when they came over to the Americas on like the Game Boy Advanced, and I'd always get like about a quarter of the way through and get frustrated because a level was like too hard. I was under prepared for it, and I would lose like all my favorite characters. I know some of the more recent ones, like I'd love to go back and find like, I know there's one where like the whole thing is like trying to like pair up all of the different characters you meet in like weird love, situations, and like get them to have kids and their kids fight for you and some weird shit. But this one, you are a professor at basically a religious military academy.
Okay.
And you start off as a mercenary, and the archbishop of this church is like, "Hey dog, you're pretty rad, and you're a mercenary and shit. Why don't you just become a teacher now?" And it's wild, it's fucking crazy, and I love every second of it.
All right.
It's so good. For those of you who know what I'm talking about, I chose, so you get to pick much like the game implies on the title, there are 3 houses that you can choose from, because they're the 3 different like factions of the world besides this church. And I chose, so there's 3. There's the Black Eagles, the Blue Lions, and the Golden Deer.
I'm a silver snake personally.
Yeah, right. And so I picked I think the fan favorite based on like the online stats is the Black Eagles.
Of course they are.
And so I chose the Blue Lions because I found the majority of the people to be tolerable.
Okay.
And plus my waifu's in that class, so
sure.
There's that. I found that the other houses, there were people that I'm just like, I just hate the way you are, and I want to ignore you as much as I can.
Why am you the way you are?
Why are you way you are? Please stop.
For the record, I am a Ravenclaw.
Ooh, yes. You've changed houses already.
I'm gonna make 100 of these jokes.
Nice. Well, and what's really fun is, so the tutorial is super long, but like it slowly introduces all of like the quote unquote like professor mechanics, because like you go around and you only have so much energy for all the different activities. So like you have to like micromanage like your relationships with like the students, and like you also have to train them, but like you have to motivate them to like get better at the things that they're doing. And there's a lot. This game has a lot going on, which is so different from a Fire Emblem game, because most of them are just like, here's your tactics rock, paper, scissors game. And now it's like, hey, here's your rock, paper, scissors game, but that's like half the game, and then the rest of it is like just an anime waifu simulator. Have fun. And I'm like, yes, I love it. I love yeah. It's so good. It's super long though. Like
Hey.
I've already put something like 20 hours into the game, which isn't a lot, but like I know people who are like still not finished with the game and not even close, and they put 50 in, and I'm scared. And I've also heard, and this is all rumors of course, but like each house has kind of like their, like the game story changes based on which house you pick.
Okay.
So like if you're done with your first playthrough, like you could still play again and choose a different house and have different stuff happen, and it's a lot, but it's super. It takes all the things that I really enjoy about Fire Emblem and amps them up a little bit.
Okay.
But then like takes the things that I don't like and kind of says, well, you don't need that. You can if you want, but like you don't need it.
Okay.
So
like this sounds awesome, and I've heard really good things about it, and like my friend like listed just a list of names, and I was like, what's up with that list of names? He's like, that was my definitive ranking of all the kids in like Fire Emblems, the 3 houses or whatever. Yeah. I love how it's like the concept of it's like, all right, so like here's some like escapist fantasy games. It's like in this game you play like the god of war, the like biggest beefiest god who ever lived, and it's like, okay, cool. It's like in this one you play like a fucking, I don't know, like knight of the realm, and it's cool. And it's like, and in this one you play as Robin Williams from the Dead Poet Society. It's like I gotta inspire these kids.
Yeah, man, you're not wrong. And there's something lovely about the split up between the, because like the reason that I wasn't a big Fire Emblem fan was, I think it was for the most part on the older stuff, I wasn't super thrilled about the story. They were very like kind of, you know, save the world,
sure,
or whatever, or there's an evil faction that wants to kill you. Like it was very whatever. Yeah. And then there was just a lot of battling, and don't get me wrong, the tactics battling in that game is super good, but like it was also very hard because it was one of the first games that I know of that had like permadeath system in it.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
And so in the earlier ones, like the only person who had to like live through a fight was the main character. But like you could lose, you know, like say you had a buddy and you know they were your favorite cavaliers, like a guy with a spear and a horse, and then they die. It's like, well, you lost them forever. Congratulations, they're dead now. And then they kind of got away from that and added basically a newbie mode where like if they die, they're just dead for the combat, but then come back.
Okay.
I'm playing it on classic because there's a time rewind mechanic where you can basically go back a couple turns in case you fucked up. So like I'm willing to accept those odds. And I've over leveled myself to a ridiculous point where I'm like level 20 doing combat encounters for like level 13 parties. So
nice.
Yeah, that's it's one cool. Of the it's in my opinion and granted I'm sure there are some Fire Emblem fanatics who don't like that it's a lot easier than the other games. But I think this is a great, like if you like tactics games, but like Fire Emblem was just like too much, I think this does a healthy spread of like battle and like, but then also like being a professor at a school and just motivating all of your classmates, and who knows, maybe one will like you more than just a student. That's completely unprofessional, but
notice me, senpai.
Notice me.
Yeah, God forbid, like, a game provide a good jumping on point to get other people interested in your game franchise. Good job.
Right?
Good job, Intense fans.
But yeah,
we love
it's
you,
so
Intense
good.
Fire Album fans. Stick around, guys.
Yes.
They throw their podcasts into the garbage or whatever.
Oh no, they took ours and they're just like, oh, what a bunch of garbage. Threw it away.
That's fair. Yeah, we'll address this later in the podcast.
So that was and then I also had a birthday. I'm now officially old.
Happy I'm saying actually no, it's a public domain now. I can sing it all I want.
Is that public domain?
I believe so. I believe everyone like lost their minds when it became public domain.
All right, well, let's not risk it.
Yeah, I mean, I sing in I was less than 30 seconds. Come at us. Got the estate of the guy who wrote Happy Birthday.
Well, I can also edit it, so we're good.
That's fair. And you can make it sound like, I don't know, like a chipmunk or something.
Sure. Or just,
there's laws that say that if a chipmunk sings it, ain't no problems there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm something of like a light legal scholar.
Okay, cool.
That's not true. So anyway,
yeah. So, besides that,
yeah,
what have you been up to?
Oh man, I've been keeping it so timely, Cody.
Yeah,
this is a reference that everyone's gonna love. I finished season 3 of Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of doing a bit where I waited until August 4th and binge it all in one day, but like, cause that's funny to me personally. It was like, man, this Stranger Things show is pretty good, guys. Like, why didn't I tell? I liked it more than season 2. I think it was a very strong season. I had a lot of fun with it. I know that this might be a controversial opinion, but I like it when things like sometimes break down into smaller teams.
Yeah.
Like I know like a lot like sometimes people will get mad because it's like I want to see my team all together, but like it's fun, especially to like watch how like the stories kind of like intertwined with one another. So it's like, oh man, the Scoop Troop learned something that would be like really important for like the kids to know when like Joyce and Hopper like learn something that like everyone would need to know, but like ain't no cell phones, so you can't just like call anyone willy-nilly and tell them the information. It's like it was just fun to like watch the different team dynamics. I'm not gonna lie, I was partial to the Scoops Ahoy team, or the Scoop Troop as the internet has branded them.
Scoop Troop, I love it.
Right? It's a good name.
It's a good one.
Although, hey, want to hear a fun fact?
Yes.
You know the actress who played Robin? Do you know that she's the Scoop Troop girl?
I don't know what that means.
The like Steve's coworker.
Yeah.
The ice cream stand. She's Uma Thurman's daughter.
You know, I heard that somewhere recently, and I was like, wow, that's super neat.
And like she's like Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke's daughter, and then someone like put like a side by side of like Uma Thurman in Kill Bill Volume 1 and her in Stranger Things, and they like look almost identical because genetics are crazy.
Yeah.
Another fun thing is Jonathan Hickman, comic book writer, who was famous for ending the Marvel Universe and then left Marvel for a little bit because he wanted to write some solo stuff, has come back and is going to be writing X-Men for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Mutants forever.
I read the first couple, and it's really dense and weird and cool. So
nice.
Yeah, he's this guy who so his big thing was he started writing like a Fantastic Four run, and then he started writing an Avengers run, and then he wrote a Secret Avengers run, and then like at the back of the books they were like, here's the overly complicated reading order. It's like you have to read like Avengers 1 through 5, and then you have to read Secret Avengers 1, then you have to read like Avengers 6 and 7, and then you have to read Secret Avengers 2 and 3, and then like skip a couple, and then then you're gonna double back and read the ones that you skipped. And I was like, my friend's like, it's good, trust me. So yeah, I'm excited to see this. He's known for like writing big epic stories, and the other big thing he is known for is like basically in issue 1 giving you all the answers and then just like making you sit there and be like, was that the thing? He's like, no, it wasn't the thing. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Nice.
X-Men, welcome to die.
Oh, okay.
Do you know about that?
No.
It's a pretty famous scene from the X-Men arcade beat 'em up. Where, Magneto flies up and he has his beautiful purple cape and his beautiful purple helmet, and he has his arms folded and he goes, X-Men, welcome to die, and then he goes away and then you have to fight minions.
Oh man, I love those sweet translations.
Yeah, it was
because that was a Capcom game, yeah.
It was a Capcom game, with your your standard X-Men favorites. You could be Cyclops.
Yes.
You could be Nightcrawler.
Mm-hmm.
You could be Colossus. I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
It could be everyone's favorite angry Canadian boy, Wolverine.
Yeah.
And
I always loved the when Cyclops would fucking just like shoot the entire room with lasers.
It's Colossus, not Cyclops.
And of course, everyone's favorite X-Men, Dazzler.
Ooh.
Dazzler's actually really cool. So anyway,
I tried to keep my cool, but I feel like.
So yeah, shall we jump into the content?
Yeah, depress me.
So actually, no, this is a fun one. Yeah, that's why I chose this season, because like
Liar.
That's fair.
History is sad.
It is sad. It is the through line of history. Is that history is sad. So yeah, we're talking about how science fiction it represents the opinions of the time, the world in which they were created, some of the technology in which they were created, etc., etc. Now, Cody, you might not know this about me, but I am fond of a little TV series called
Star Wars.
Trek. Yeah, Star Wars.
Star Trek Star.
My favorite character, of course, is
Yoda.
Mr. Trek.
Ooh.
Yeah. And he's friends with Ham Salad.
Yeah.
And Chupacabra is there. But anyway.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah. So Star Trek, the original series, it was a television program from the 1960s that was developed by a man named Gene Roddenberry. I said that very, I don't know why I said that with so much like gusto or whatever.
I was actually gonna say, like, if we need to go get a room for a hot minute before we continue on, like, we can do that, because like that was some sultry shit. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna be hot and bothered this whole time. Just letting you know.
So anyway, Gene Roddenberry was a television screenwriter, producer, and a gentleman who wrote, sci-fi wasn't necessarily his forte originally. But the gentleman was born in El Paso, Texas, and then his family moved to LA, where his father was a police officer. Roddenberry was a veteran who served in the United States Air Force, or rather, like, the precursor of the Air Force, because the Air Force was kind of a new thing during World War II. And then he, like I said, he produced television programs, and he wrote a lot of television programs, and the big thing that he liked to write initially was Westerns.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say naughty sex books.
I mean, you know what, Cody?
Sorry, this is the tone that I've brought to the episode. I'm sorry.
I could say I could probably pull off at least 5 episodes of like unlikely like people who wrote sex stuff who are like beloved family entertainers.
Oh my god.
And I'm going to put that one in my back pocket.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Roddenberry basically worked in television for a little while, right? He worked on some cop shows. He worked on a show called like The Lieutenant. He worked on Perry Mason for a while. That was like a lawyer show. He worked on a film called Master of the World, which didn't seem to go anywhere. Things like that. But in 1964, he had this like little idea that he imagined the future. What's that out in the distance,
and what
Cody?
did he see?
What?
What did he see?
He saw space. The final frontier. So yeah, he wrote basically he wrote up like a little pitch, and he always had this kind of idea, like especially when he was, like developing movies and stuff. He always had this idea of he wanted to represent like a multi-ethnic crew on an airship, or anything like that. So like, this was his idea was, he wanted to showcase a group of people who, were from different races, different backgrounds, different economic statuses, things like that, working together, and a world where there were, like people who were smart and everyone respected everyone. And it didn't matter if you were, like, a not white man, basically. So it was the 60s. Everyone was, respected. Now here's the crazy thing about...
That's actually really cool.
I know, right?
I wanted to say that because I know I gasped earlier, but that was in jest.
Oh,
actually, really, that whole concept is like so. It's like beautiful. I
is.
don't know, like that was the only word I could pull from my vernacular that made sense to that scenario.
Yeah, no, and I mean, there are actually like a lot of like really cool stories that come out of this. So like, one of the she wasn't necessarily a primary character, but she was a featured player in Star Trek, was Lieutenant Uhura, who was played by Michelle Nichols. She was the communications officer. She was also an African-American female. And after season 1, she wasn't like reportedly very happy with like the show and things like that. She was at I believe it was like a dinner for like African Americans in like the creative arts and things like that. And she was approached by Martin Luther King Jr., who said that he loved watching Star Trek with his girls because he loved his girls to see a respected black woman on a television program. Like, at no point did anyone call her like doll or sweetheart or anything like that. Like, she would express her opinions, people would listen to her, people would consider them, and basically after that encounter she decided to stay on the show. If you listen to like Gene Roddenberry's interviews, he doesn't use the most politically correct language by 2019's terms, but he talked about how like he would constantly be fighting the studio because like you can have maybe like one black person per episode, and he would like have black crew members just walking around in the backgrounds of shots. Like, it was so integrated, Asian actors, things like that. And then now this is gonna sound weird after saying all that, but the one other thing too that he brought on was he apparently fought pretty hard to create the character of Chekhov, who was a Russian officer, because, connected to the theme, the first Star Trek was premiering in the 60s during the height of the Cold War. So this is a future where these petty little squabbles of the past have been put aside, and we're all working together as one great big human race. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah, I love it.
Now, that's not to say that it was without conflict. Of course, the bad guys in the original series were the Klingons, who I love, and then the Romulans. But we also had aliens who were nice to us and things like that. And I think the thing that everyone talks about too, or an important thing to remember about the early show, is that the Enterprise is an exploratory vessel. It's going on missions. Yes, it has weapons, it has phasers, it has missiles and things like that, but that's almost always Kirk's last resort, or the captain's last resort, right? Now, there's one other cool thing that I want to pull out there. You know who is a pretty important advocate for Star Trek?
Who?
It's Lucille Ball, of course, the star of I Love Lucy.
Huh.
Yeah, Lucille
Okay.
Ball was a pretty respected like actress, producer, comedian, things like that. And she basically was so in love with this idea in this series that she really fought for Roddenberry to be able to go for it. Even after the original like pilot was something of like a disaster, she was like, no, I think this is something that could really be special. So the original Star Trek lasts 3 seasons, which is a pretty respectable run. And of course,
you say seasons, right? And like, I'm kind of fuzzy on what counts as a season nowadays.
that's fair.
Because like Netflix, it's like 10
6 episodes,
maybe. And like it also depends on like how long they are. So I assume if we're going back to the 60s, they were 30-minute runs.
They were like 40-minute episodes.
Yeah.
They were I have the numbers in front of me right here. Season 1 was 29 episodes, season 2 is 26, and season 3 was 24.
Damn, that's a lot of episodes.
Yeah, I mean, it's really respectable, right?
Yeah.
And then so like the other thing is it gets canceled, right? It was with what little budget they had, it was still an incredibly expensive television program to produce. It was, this kind of like weird little cult television show that had a really passionate fan base, but it wasn't bringing in the numbers that anyone had hoped. And then for like, basically the run of like the 70s, it was playing pretty frequently in syndication. It was growing and growing in fan base, so they decided, all right, we'll take a risk. They gave it a couple of movies. The movies did really well. And now we're going to jump forward to 1989, 1990, which was Gene Roddenberry is given a second chance, and he creates Star Trek The Next Generation. Now this one runs for 7 seasons.
Holy crap.
And was like one of the most popular television programs ever. Now I will also say that very much, the Star Trek of the 60s represented the great idea of space exploration. So like this was a small ragtag crew that was going out amongst the stars, and their mission was to make contact with a planet and hopefully convince them, hey, join the Federation. We're cool guys. We work really well together. You should join up with us. And they would get into conflicts, and they might have to fight some Klingons, or they might run into, like one of 8 godlike beings. And then, there's some Cold War tensions too, where, you have these like 3 empires who are kind of always side-eyeing one another, and no one's ever making a move because everyone knows that as soon as one faction makes a move, the other 2 factions are going to move, and no one wants to go to war and things like that. Very representative of the Cold War. Next Generation represents, it has a very like 80s sensibility to it in a lot of ways. Also in the subsequent kind of like decade, Gene Roddenberry started becoming more of like an idealist than anything else. So like he imagined by the time we got to the 24th century, which is when Next Generation takes place, we're not going to have money anymore. We're not going to have conflict anymore. Everyone's going to work together in peace and harmony, things like that. A big thing about it too is that the Next Generation established a new character, or rather a new class of character called the ship's counselor. So she would be there to like help the captain with negotiations. She would make sure that the crew was doing okay, things like that. So it's, now it's representing a little bit more of like an 80s, 90s belief system,
Sure. Yeah.
Once again, some tensions had broken down, so like the Romulans were kind of reluctant allies at this point. Things along those lines. The Next Generation, once again, features an incredibly diverse cast of characters. It also had like a robot in it. That was pretty cool. And then, the third one, the third series to come out is for a couple years coming out subsequent with Star Trek The Next Generation. Oh, the big thing about Next Generation 2 is that most of our galaxy has been explored. So instead of this being like a ragtag little exploration vessel, it is a diplomatic vessel. So a lot of episodes are, hey, we're taking diplomat from planet A to planet B, and it very much believed in a future where everyone was going to sit down and talk to one another, and very, very rarely were things ending in wars in the Next Generation universe. And then
very cool.
Yeah. So once again, by I think season 3, Gene Roddenberry had passed away. So you start seeing a teensy bit more interpersonal conflict on the ship, because as writers talk about, conflict equals story. And then the third major series to come out is the one I just finished this year called Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which is kind of, it's starting in the mid 90s and going through the 90s. And this one kind of asks the major thesis, what does it take to preserve paradise?
Okay.
Yeah. So like, by the mid 90s to the late 90s, we start seeing things in our, like our conversations of media and history and things like that, often referred to by the lens of postmodernism. So this is things like, let's look at history through like a feminist lens, or let's look through it through a colonial lens. And so, history, which, history, that's when we start seeing history start getting murky and muggy, and, hey, maybe Xing wasn't as great as we thought, and you really see those ideas being reflected in Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine is very much a war story. It's very much a story that makes characters make hard decisions and hard questions. One of the best episodes of the series, in my opinion, is the eventual reveal that the protagonist of the Stowe has done an incredibly unethical thing to make an alliance that will help him win a war in the long run. It's a show that's very much reflecting our growing sort of gray understanding of what history has become, which I think really represents the late 90s and the early 2000s well. Voyager, Enterprise, and Discovery get a little murkier. There are fans of all of them. I have not watched them yet, so I don't necessarily feel comfortable commenting how they reflect the time period. But you can also see a little bit more like meddling and things like that. But those first 3 shows, the TOS, Next Gen, and Deep Space Nine, I think are pretty prime examples of people telling stories about today through the lens of tomorrow. So in the 60s, you have your bold, adventuring exploration with, touches of the Cold War. In the, 80s and early 90s, it's the world is at peace. We are now diplomats. We talk things out. We don't fight things out. And then the 90s is, well, hey, or like the late 90s, early 2000s is, well, hey, how is a paradise formed, and what needs to happen in order to retain that paradise? So that's my little talk about Star Trek. Do you have any questions?
Questions? No.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I'm on the outside of the Star Trek spectrum. Sure. I've never watched it, and I'll be honest, it is such a daunting task that you know, Lord knows I probably won't watch it unless someone like sits me down in a chair and like forces me to watch it. But
Yeah.
I do like based on what I know, the little that I know, I've seen a couple of like the newer movies. We watched the first couple of episodes of Discovery. So like I'm a little,
You're aware.
I'm aware of it, and I actually really like the stuff that's going on in those shows.
Yeah.
As much as I couldn't sit down and watch all that, at least not without a lot of time and effort.
Sure.
But I do like the things that you said, and like the things that my wife has told me about. Like, it's such a cool idea, and I love the idea of, basically humans just not being fucking dicks to each other. Like, I as blunt as that is, I like that Star Trek kind of like takes that and is like, nah, dog, fuck that.
Yeah, we're cool.
Let's talk about real shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think like when I came up with this idea, I think Star Trek was the one that really pointed most boldly to me like what this sort of thesis was.
Right.
The next couple ones I'm going to talk about are similar in a lot of ways, but like it was the first time, like, as I was like, because I wasn't ever a huge sci-fi person.
Okay.
As a kid, like I was more of a fantasy and science fantasy. So like, people have said that Star Wars really isn't a sci-fi thing because it's like, how does the spaceship go? And the answer is like, it goes. Now they have like answers for it and shit, but it's like, it's like how the ship works isn't necessarily important. But in Star Trek, like there are whole episodes about like how the fucking warp core works and how we need to like fix X thing to make it go faster. And then like scientists are like, I mean, it's kind of like nonsense, but like it's well thought through nonsense.
Sure. Yeah.
And like I think that like it was Star Trek was the first time where I was like, oh my gosh, like he's talking about the Cold War. Like, call me stupid if you will, but I'm like, he's talking about the Cold War, and like he's doing it using like the future, and in the future where everything turned out okay. And there are characters who laugh about the fact that at one point in history, like, humans were, doing the similar thing that was happening right now. And I was like, that's kind of neat. And that was like really what kind of awakened my like real love of science fiction, I think. Like I said, the next couple of shows I'm going to talk about here are similar in some ways. Not necessarily happy, but I also like the fact that it's happy. Like, I know I say Deep Space Nine gets a little darker and a little murkier and a little grayer, but like at the end of the day, it is still about a crew of people working really hard to make sure that the world that they're living in remains good. And I like that. So
yeah, that sounds rad.
Yeah. And on that, shall we go into the
middle section?
Hey guys, welcome to the middle section.
Yes, welcome.
This is where we tell you guys about how you can listen to the podcast and how you can let others listen to the. I mean, you're already listening, so I guess you figured it out somehow. Shit, this is bad. Hey, so let's say that you just wanted to like show us. You saw something and it gave you a good old belly laugh. You're like, I think that Joe and Cody would appreciate that. I want to send it to them in a short form communication. How would they do that, Cody?
Well, they could get at us at Twitter at fandomr_podcast. That is our Twitter handle.
Yeah. Now, hey, Cody.
Yes.
I'm the world's biggest Fire Emblem fan, and I'm mad at the things you said in the intro. And I want to write a lengthy thing about how, I'm mad at you. How can I do that?
Well, you can send that to me at fanroulettepodcast@gmail.com.
Oh,
and
cool.
I would fucking love to hear, because like, man, I'm out of the loop on the Fire Emblem craze, and like I'm jumping into this game and it's fucking amazing. So like I really want to know why people like it, or like liked the earlier stuff when like I just couldn't get into it. So like, yeah, I mean, if you think I'm a fucking asshat, like hit me up and tell me like why. I'd love to hear it.
All right. Hey, Cody, I want to send you an email, but I don't want you knowing my email, so you don't sell it to Russian hackers. That's just one that's
Man.
never going to go away, is it?
I mean, it could.
I'll have to think about it. I don't know. I'll have to.
Well, I have a solution for you.
Okay.
If you go to our website at www.fandomroulette.com, you can find all of our episodes. You can find a little bio about us, and all the way at the bottom, right next to our social media links, there's a little area where you can fill, your internet tag if you want to, let us know who you are so we can shout you out, or and just, the title of what you're talking about, and then your standard email. You can do a strong worded letter about Fire Emblem and why I'm a ding dong, or about the other ding dong things I'm going to say later in the episode, because trust me, I'm sure you wanna.
Heck yeah.
You could do it there.
All right. Hey, I found you on SoundCloud. What are other places where I can find you? That was.
I'm glad you asked in a
was...
way that actually made sense to the question or to the answer that you wanted me to say.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay,
We're on
that's
iTunes.
fair enough.
We're on Google Play.
Okay.
We're on Spotify.
Ooh.
And we're also on RSS feed. So your podcast apps on your phone. We are there. Just search Fandom Roulette.
Nice. And is there any other social media that you're on?
Yes, we're on Facebook. My wife manages that content and produces real funny clips or just asks questions. When the mood strikes us, we like to ask the fans, and if people reach out and talk to us about the questions we ask on the podcast, we'd love to, shout you out and bring people up to speed on what other people thought. And so that we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Tumblr, and of course, from earlier, we're on Twitter.
Heck yeah.
All Fandom Roulette.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you guys so much. Spread the word, and we'll talk to you guys at the end of the episode, and we're going to give you another call to action. Bye!
Bye! But not actually bye. Welcome back.
Yeah, hey, welcome back. So Cody, I'm not gonna lie to you. I feel like I'm running out of video game characters to do.
Well, you know what? It's okay. It's all right. Don't worry. We already blew the budget years ago on the machines that you bought.
Yeah, no.
So
hey, I got a new
I'm just gonna jump in.
I got one right here. It's called the Nolan North 5000. Where you press a button and you press lots of little buttons, and then it's supposed to come out with creative character voice, but it's always the same voice.
Oh,
love you,
very
love
cool.
you, love you, Nolan. Thanks for listening to the podcast.
Man, that would be rad.
That would be rad. That would be our.
Oh my god!
Break.
I don't know what I would do with my heart.
Everyone, send this episode to no, not this one, not this one.
Oh.
I'm Commander. Nope.
God damn it.
Yeah, all right, cool. Hey, what are you talking about, Cody?
So today, or this season, I've been talking about video game movies.
Yeah.
And the general theme thus far has been they're awful and they're bad, and there's so many things that could be done to make them better. But today is gonna be the day. No!
See,
today is
stopped off at 10 seconds or whatever.
Yeah. So today I'm talking about a video game movie.
Yeah.
That didn't suck, and I actually really loved it.
What?
And yeah, it's one of the very few that I have seen that's you know what? This is rad. And you probably already know where I'm going if you are attentive to what we talk about typically. I'm talking about Detective Pikachu.
Doom. Oh,
yes.
Oh god. Oh, this is
Dwayne's
The Rock
Dwayne's
Johnson.
number one movie.
It's true. Yeah. And everyone asks him, they're like, hey, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He's like, please just call me Dwayne Johnson. Everyone's like, cool, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. What's your number one favorite movie? And he was like, obviously it's Dune.
Did you say Dune?
I did say Dune.
Yeah, no, it's Doom.
Hey, He might be in Dune. We don't know. Every fucking person in Hollywood at this point is in the new Dune. Like,
fair enough.
It's like, hey, who are you playing? It's like, oh, I'm playing like Guard 3, and it's like, cool, I'm playing Guard 2. And you know the two people who were having that conversation with one another? Well, yes, it was Vin Diesel and like Ludacris. Stars of the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Oh man. It feels like I feel like we're talking also about Star Wars, or at least the newer ones.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in the new Star Wars. Like how Daniel Craig was like, yeah, I had like a 10-second cameo in The Force Awakens because like we were filming Bond
like,
next door, and I was like, can I wear that armor? And they were like, cool. He's like, can I be in a scene? They're like, sure, why the hell not, James Bond? And he just went out there. He was like, cool. I was like, damn, that's cool.
That's rad. So enough about Star Wars. We're talking about Detective Pikachu.
Hell yeah. Quick sidebar.
Oh, because we've never done one of those before.
Do you see the fucking new Pokemon for Sword and Shield?
Yes, I saw that
dropped
today.
Like today.
Yeah,
which is gonna date this episode immediately.
Oh yeah,
dude,
yeah.
I have never wanted to cosplay a character more than like fucking Dickensian villain Weezing.
I love that wheezing. I don't know,
so
like
good.
it's so bad, but I love it.
They're like a
He's got a fucking
hat.
giant
That's a
chimney
literal
hat,
stovepipe.
and he's got fucking a green mustache because he's proper now.
It's so good. Okay, can I tell you a real fact story? Is like,
yes.
I was like scrolling through my Twitter this morning and I saw that and I was like, huh, that's funny fan art. So I sent it to my friend who's loves Pokemon, and then I was like, hey, check this out. This is funny, right? Because like, remember when like they announced it was like, oh, it's gonna be in England, and like someone created like a fucking like evolution where it was like an English Bobby, and it's like, oi, what's all this then? And it's like, it was just all these amazing British jokes. I was like, that's so fucking funny that they gave Weezing like a fucking chimney top hat and a fucking mustache made out of smoke. And then I saw the official Pokemon page that it was real, and I lost my goddamn mind.
It's so good. They really got to pull. They got to pull all the stops because everyone is pissed that the national dex no longer exists.
Yeah, I know. All right, so anyway, Detective Pikachu. Sorry for that. I just wanted to talk about my new favorite boy.
Yeah.
I'm going to protect him at all costs.
Right. So I'm talking about this, and I'm going to try to keep this as brief because the next session or the next part of the podcast is gonna go longer.
Yeah, it's fine.
But top rated by Rotten Tomatoes video game movie out 68% on Rotten Tomatoes. Detective Pikachu is a family movie where the son of a detective gathers the remains of his father's stuff after a horrific car crash where he stumbles upon a Pikachu that can talk. What? That's it. That's all you need to know to go into that movie, and it's amazing.
And one more thing, that Pikachu is Deadpool.
Is also Deadpool, yes. Gosh, if you are not a fan of Pokemon, like, at all, I have a feeling you're not going to like this movie. Okay. I'll just be honest. Because it is definitely like a Pokemon movie made for fans of Pokemon. It's good, but like if you're not a fan of Pokemon,
I'd kind of like to put that to the test, actually.
I would too. I would actually love to sit someone down who like knows dick all about Pokemon and is just like, hey, watch this. Do you like it? Because I think it's a fairly solid detective noir. Like it's kind of like, it's kind of baby's first detective noir where you're kind of trying to figure out what happened through the movie. And I really like that. And this is the first video game movie where I feel like not only did the writers, everyone involved did the franchise justice, but it felt real to the point where I was sad afterwards that Pokemon aren't real. I was just like so deflated after realizing that, like, I'm never gonna have a Bulbasaur that hangs out with me and just goes Bulba. Like, it's so good. The CGI is amazing. And as much as I was very meh on Ryan Reynolds being Detective Pikachu, because I felt like in my head that was very much a like, well, Deadpool's kind of cool. Why don't we get him to do this?
Yeah.
You know, like not thinking about it. But he actually did a really good job with Detective Pikachu. I felt there were actual emotions, and it was weird. I felt things, and I was happy and sad and scared and excited throughout the whole movie. And granted, I'm also a big Pokemon nerd, so like, if you are a fan of Pokemon and you haven't seen this movie, like, go find it, watch it. It's great. I love it. I would love to actually find somebody who isn't a fan and go see it to find their reaction, because I'm not sure that, like, if you can get past the Pokemon hype, I do think some of the more meh moments are that the characters, because they're younger, they're kind of weak.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of, like one of them, so it's a guy and a girl, they're the kind of main characters, and the girl is, like, trying really hard to impress society by being like a news reporter and trying to get to the bottom of things. And like, it feels like it feels a little try-hardy at times. And there are some really awkward, like, kid moments where, like, the main character, who is a insurance salesman.
Mm-hmm. You know,
so like, I imagine you have to be fairly old, but like can't talk to girls and like is awkward, and there's like weird, and it's like, what? I thought you were like 30 or whatever.
Hey man. Hey now. I'm almost 30, and I also am awkward when I talk to girls. So
fair enough. It just felt like in this movie, for a guy who's got a talking Pokemon, it felt weird. And I think part of it is also geared towards kids.
Sure.
So I know the kid parts aren't gonna, like, I would love to see a fucking gritty, mature Pokemon movie. I know it's never gonna happen, but I want it.
Yeah, a gritty, mature, with Pokemon who fuck.
Well, okay, I wasn't. That's not where I wanted to go.
Well, I mean, because of course it wouldn't go there, because what would happen is the scientists who are designed to fucking study Poke mating rituals would be like, yeah, we turned her back and like an egg showed up, so like figure that fucking out.
Yeah, they just shrug and they're like, oh, eggs, I guess.
Shit, man, I don't know.
But
yeah, even the mammalian ones are born out of eggs. Deal with that, idiots.
Yeah. So this is a great movie.
Yeah.
And it's funny because right when Detective Pikachu came out, we saw the awful trailer for Sonic like fairly quickly, like around that time period.
Mm-hmm.
Sonic's got a lot to do to beat that.
It's true. Hey, he's a really cool dude. He's got an attitude.
He's got an attitude. It's true. So if you haven't seen it, go look at it.
Yeah.
Go take a look. If you know, it's so good. I think it's the first time that a like the company who went and wrote it and produced it and made the CGI, like you could tell that they put love into it. Like the world fit around the Pokemon. It's not like this weird, like, disjointed thing where like it feels really video gamey, and like, this is the world of Pokemon. It felt like usually I'm pretty skeptical about movies, and like I can sometimes throw myself out of the moment by like nitpicking it, so it's like that's on me. But like, this movie did a really good job at like being like, no, Cody, shut the fuck up and enjoy the movie, please.
Have fun, bud.
Yeah, and it was super good, and you should definitely, if you're a fan of Pokemon, you should go see it. I think I would love to hear someone's thoughts on that, so definitely definitely tweet or email us about if you are not a fan of Pokemon and went and see it and what your thoughts are, for sure.
I saw it too. I agree with Cody. It was fun, and I'm not like I'm a Pokemon fan without being like a Pokemon fanatic, and I really liked it. So
Yeah.
all right. So,
And this is gonna be the only good movie that comes up from this point forward.
hey, don't say that. You never know.
No,
One of these
there's no other movies.
One of them might surprise you. You don't know.
All right.
Yeah.
To be fair, there is 2 movies that have a very close Rotten Tomatoes rating to Detective Pikachu, but I can't believe that one of them is Rampage. So, like, that might be one that I have to look at.
I remember the trailer for that movie rules.
Oh. I mean, I hope it rips. Because that might be the next one. But there's a one close to my heart that's coming.
I mean,
but I
I've
need to
heard
actually set up my house.
I've heard rumors that Assassin's Creed is so weird that it kind of becomes art.
Oh.
Like
kind of like an avant-garde bullshit thing?
Yeah, right? I don't know, man.
Okay.
But anyway.
I'm kind of into that.
Hey, Cody.
Yeah.
I have a question I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You and a party of adventurers
yes
are journeying to a city to get gifts. The party might include a paladin, a reluctant barbarian, and a rogue, and all of them have at least 1 level in Bard.
Oh. And there's 3 of them?
There's technically 4. I couldn't think of I would say the 4th one is pretty pure Bard.
Sure.
But yeah.
Well, I don't think it's Road to El Dorado.
Nope.
Shit. You got me stumped. What is it?
It is The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, God damn it.
Yeah, they
that's
all have
so
one
good.
song.
Oh man, that's so good, and it fits. I love it. That was good.
If I could take you behind the veil real quick, whoop.
Yes.
Don't mind the old man behind the curtain. Little Wizard of Oz joke for you. So after the last time, Cody and I decided that we were going to try to, at the very least, put maybe 1 or 2 characters into a D&D class. And it's gonna be interesting, and I'm gonna just get out ahead of it. It's gonna be a your mileage may vary kind of thing. But if you want my breakdown, I argue that the Tin Man is kind of a paladin. The reluctant barbarian is the cowardly lion.
Yeah.
And the scarecrow is kind of roguish.
Okay.
He does some sneaking. And then Dorothy's pretty much a pure bard because she uses a lot of charisma and negotiation. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those loosely fit.
Yeah,
I like that.
I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes there's gonna be some weeks there might be a stretch here or there, but bear with us.
Well, you know
We're
what?
having fun.
I feel like as we develop this game, because I love this game.
Yeah, it's great.
I think it's okay if they don't fit to just omit that.
That's fair.
Part.
Okay,
You
fair
know,
enough.
like or better yet, be like they kind of all had. Like I liked that they all had a level in Bard.
Yeah.
Because, like, I immediately knew from that it was probably a musical of some kind, which is why Road to El Dorado came up, and I'm like, well, he said 4, so.
But yeah, I like it too. I think it's a good bit. I think it's a fun game.
Yeah.
So anyway.
This is our new bit.
Yeah.
We're no longer doing the Garbage Kid, at least for the time being.
Yeah. They might pop up
but
every now and then.
Yeah, so we're kind of jumping through some fun word games and things like that from the transition to the video game to the D&D section.
Hell yeah. Welcome to the D&D section, fans. Oh, we're talking about magic. Cody, what enchanting what enchanting things are we going to talk about today?
None.
What?
Yeah, so we wanted to do a bit of a role reversal. It's still on theme, but we wanted to talk about low to no magic settings in your tabletop role-playing game.
Yep.
And I wanted to get ahead of this before the comments and before people started writing angry visage letters before getting to the end. My personal opinion on low or no magic settings, at least in D&D 5th edition. I think it's bad. I think Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, just Dungeons and Dragons in general, is not the toolkit that you should use.
No.
I think you can tailor it, and you could definitely make something that would be really cool, and I'm sure there are people that have, and they're rad, and I would love to see that.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like at its core, D&D was both narratively and mechanically balanced around the idea of high magic.
Yeah.
Because, like...
creating your own Lord of the Rings style adventure.
Right. That's not to say that it can't be done.
Yeah.
But I think there are easier ways to avoid magic, like using fate or GURPS or just picking a new genre. Like there's a Firefly pen and paper RPG that I briefly was looking at that doesn't have any magic. If you're looking for a Western, Dogs in the Vineyard has no magic in it, and it's got a really cool kind of poker style like battle system, which is really fun. But that being said, I think low magic settings in D&D can be fucking so cool.
Yeah.
And in fact, our first campaign together, I ran a low magic setting.
Mm-hmm.
The idea was that magic was illegal and only certain people could use it. And so I threw in at session 0 that if you were going to use magic, you would know that, like, you know, authorities wouldn't like you. Yeah. You know, they don't want you using magic unless you're part of the force or whatever. And so, and initially
you had a party
with
this 4 magic users.
Exactly. So, and this is a DM rookie mistake. I did this initially because I was intimidated by Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and playing with 6 people. Mm-hmm. So the idea of potentially all of them being magic users was overwhelming. And of course, so for a narrative reason, I made up why you should probably avoid using magic characters. Mm-hmm. Most of the party was magic.
Yeah. Sorry.
So it didn't work out in my favor. No, and that's totally fine, because once I got in there and I started playing it, magic was a thing of the past, and eventually there was a time jump where you guys went from, like a year or so had passed, and I removed that restriction on the game because I didn't need it anymore. Mm-hmm. But thinking back on it, I would love to do something similar to it, but go even further.
Yeah.
And I had this idea, if you don't mind me getting a little
of course,
long-winded.
Go ahead, my man.
So the premise would be, I'd bring it up in session 0 that in this world, magic is almost non-existent. Mm-hmm. Most people, like maybe some nobles or some rich people, have access to magic, but there aren't clerics that run around and heal people. There isn't just a local druid in the forest nearby. Like, magic is like crazy wild and weird and almost non-existent. And so I would tell everybody that when you so we're gonna start at level 2.
Okay.
Level 1, you have to pick a martial class.
Okay.
So that's fighter, barbarian, rogue. I would concede on monk if someone really wanted to play a monk, because the next part is I would work independently with each character for level 2. And level 2, I would be like, you can multi-class, you can pick any class you want.
Okay.
But we need to come up with a really good reason why you have spells.
Okay.
Like something real cool. And so the idea is that as long as there was an interesting narrative idea, like, sure, you start, like, everyone kind of starts off the same. If you're an adventurer, you're martial, you know how to use a sword and a shield and whatever. But then you add this second level, this extra layer. And I might not even I might make it a level that doesn't count towards your normal progression.
Okay. Interesting.
Still tweaking that idea, but like I love the idea of like Arthur the noble who becomes a warlock because his father told him to go on an epic quest, and he picks up this sword that, you know, makes a deal with him. And now all of a sudden there's this world, it's mundane, there's bandits and wolves, and all of a sudden fucking Arthur comes to town with this sword that fucking glows, and shit gets bananas. Or like Ben comes from a long line of like recluse nobility, and they have this deep dark secret that one of their ancestors saved a legendary phoenix, and promised, and they agreed to keep this a secret. And now Ben is a phoenix sorcerer, shit like that. And like what's even cooler is like you can turn these into legends, right? So like if you were to break down what a vampire is, it's kind of like being a bard.
Okay.
Like, using the power of your voice to manipulate people. Sure, there's the blood drinking and all the weird stuff, but like, what if the first vampire was just like this guy who found out he was a bard, and he still wanted to be normal, but like he would go and philander and like go from town to town and like sleep with people and whatever, but he'd only come out at night. And he would basically use his abilities to, woo people and all that stuff. And then they turned him into this monster. Like, how cool is that? And now all of a sudden you have this character who's like, oh shit, I think he's a vampire. Cause like there was a town over that said someone came in at night and then would harass the men and women of the town. And, like there's some cool shit you can do with that.
Yeah.
From a narrative standpoint. So having an open mind and like having these cool stories, now all the characters who join together in a party now have this really cool like backstory. They're integrated into the like world building of this place. And then the next part, which I think is the coolest part, is like how you world build how people feel about magic in a world where magic is very not prominent. Like how do small towns feel about magic? Like, would they all freak out and shit themselves if they saw you casting like the light spell?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, like, would they like try to run you out? Would they call the guards, and like now you're just wanted because you cast a spell? Similar to what I wanted to do before, but I never really played into that a whole lot, where you guys were like wanted vigilantes because like people didn't understand that like, no, we were saving the town, but like someone watched, Joe's character launch a fireball, so now he's a witch that needs to be hunted down.
Yeah, and I think we were also relatively good at keeping our magic not super well known.
True. You did spend a good time, or you would, when you would play, if memory serves, you wouldn't use magic in town.
Yeah.
At least until I uplifted the magic clause. So
like, and the only time we really did it was like in combat. So like we saved a town from a dragon once.
Yeah. And they were just like, well, I know magic's like illegal and shit, but you also did save our lives, so like fuck it, YOLO.
It's like the classic Spider-Man thing, right? Where it's like,
right,
you might be a vigilante, but you are vigilante, Spider-Man.
Exactly. So like I think low magic can be some of the coolest, raddest shit you have, because that also means that every magic item feels like it has a purpose and can have like deep and because like in our first campaign, all of the magic items you found, they all had a history that you guys could explore and find more about, and maybe even unlock additional powers that you hadn't seen yet. We never got there because you guys had like a lot of shit on your plate in terms of like what needed to be done. But there's a lot of cool things a DM can do. It's a lot of prep work for sure, but there's a lot of cool things you can do with a setting where like magic is definitely not the norm.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to do. Like you don't even have to limit classes or anything like that. All you have to do is just let your players know that like, hey, if you pick a magic user, like if you're in a small, you're in a small town, they might think you're like a witch and, kick you out of town. You don't know. You won't know until you find out like what the town's experience with it is.
Sure.
Now, if I had to do a no magic campaign
Okay.
in D&D 5th edition, say I had, those were the only books I had, I don't have the money or the expertise to like make my own thing or go out and find a system that works, you'd have to make quite a few tweaks, but I think it can be done.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to really lean into the social / battle mechanics a little heavily, using a lot of like the Dungeon Master Guide variant rules, like the idea of flanking and like you being a more tactical game, like closer to like a Warhammer, something like that. Altering your short rest mechanic to provide more consistent healing, because I think that's one of the big reasons why Magic is so like into the game, is because like healing is a thing.
Yeah. Or make healing potions way cheaper or easier to get. Yeah,
or change the way short rests work.
Yeah.
Maybe hit dice can be used in combat, or maybe maybe the time instead of being an hour is 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The world is your oyster. I also think in terms of like narrative setting, like look at Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
That was very magic light, like sure there were dragons and there were ice zombies, but like a lot of those houses didn't have magic as far as I could tell.
Yep.
Like there were a couple people, but like you can have interesting settings. Like I could imagine a completely non-magic focused setting where you play as nobles from various regions getting together because like someone's trying to take over and there's like a lot of political intrigue and like trying to maneuver your way around nobility and the laws of the land. I also could see like a very intense, gritty wartime campaign where you focus on living through a long and bloody war where tomorrow could be your last day.
Yeah.
And if you up the ante on those other aspects without including magic, those might be playable, but those are my thoughts on low to no magic setting. And that's not to say there are tons of rule books that don't rely on magic at all. Like the Star Wars RPG.
Yeah.
If you completely remove the Jedi aspect of it, like boom, you got a no magic setting and there's not a whole lot you need to do.
If memory serves, Blades in the Dark is like a very low magic setting. Like there's
I think there is a single magic class, but it's not like you have this robust like amount of spells or anything like that.
So I kind of like approach this question from a slightly different angle. Which is I'm going to tell this in a narrative story form. So I think it was like 2013, 2014. I don't think 5th edition had come out yet. And a friend of mine was had just bought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna blank on the name. What's the campaign setting where it's like the desert and there are like the four-armed like bugmen and things like that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Dark Sun.
Dark Sun.
Magic. It's like the apocalypse and magic is gone.
Yeah. Well, if memory serves, magic wasn't gone. Magic was just very, very dangerous.
And I think I think players could only either do like psionics or or like weird blood magic.
Yeah,
but
it was-
I was never like, I never had a campaign set in there, so I never had to look up any of the lore behind it.
Yeah, and like, you know, like I said, it never really took off the ground for, you know, a lot of reasons, which, you know, a main one being like we were all right out of college, so we all had really weird sporadic schedules, and it's, you know, it's hard to schedule these things sometimes. But I was always rather intrigued by the concept of like magic really having a price. So it was like, you can do a spell, but like it might take a lot out of you. It might drain you. It might create an explosion beyond your control. And that's like I don't know if I would necessarily go that far, but like, you know, adding some consequences to magic to make it feel like a low magic or a no magic campaign was kind of the way I thought about this question. You know, in the television program The Magicians, they kind of have this implication that magic is almost like drug use, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, you can do magic, but like, you know, if you're a warlock, like, you know, the more magic you do, the more intense you get, like the more fucked up you start looking. The more it starts taking a toll on you in some way. Like, there's a real weighty consequence to doing magic. You know, this obviously isn't to deny anyone or prevent anyone from playing what they want to play. But like, I remember this was something that we kind of played briefly with, and you know, I'm not gonna lie, it was a new player instinct where it was like I cast a necromancy spell and it drained some of the color out of my beard, and I never really played with that ever again, which was, you know, like,
yeah, you ended up avoiding those spells because of it.
Yeah.
Which kind of, not intentional, but like, it was like a weighty consequence. Like, you
Mhm.
drained a little bit of your life and it showed through your beard.
yeah.
Which could have been cool, and we could have explored it, but we wanted to explore other things.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, I think it would be cool that, like, you know, maybe it's not necessarily the question of low magic, but by putting some real weight behind the decisions that your magic users make, like, you know, maybe it does encourage them to pick up a martial class here or there and use magic as a last resort, as opposed to an every single day decision, you know? That was kind of the way I thought about it. I don't know.
Yeah, and for sorcerers, there's a wild magic sorcerer.
Yeah.
With mechanics that basically are like, hey, if you're casting anything higher than a cantrip, you got like, there's like a table that they can roll on, and like wild things can happen. And I know there's a bunch of them online of like different like variants to that rule, but like that could be something too, where like, yeah, you're in this weird kind of apocalyptic, like magic is super chaotic, and even just opening the floodgates to the arcana has like disastrous results.
Mhm.
Like, and that could be a fun way of being like, you know, like, okay, well, you're gonna cast that spell, well, you also opened up the plane of fire, and now like fire's just erupting from your hands and, you know, burns your allies in front of you or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, there's some, I mean, that's one like way to like fuck over the player, but it's also like, you could do things where like, you know, your spell that you're trying to like charm somebody, but then like they're like permanently charmed.
Mm-hmm.
And they love you, and now you have this dilemma of like, oh shit, like I'm now look at what you've done with
Man, enchantment
this
really,
spell.
enchantment magic really messed with you, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. I actually, my warlock, I actually did pick up an enchantment spell though. I'm bad.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I picked up suggestion and replaced it because I had a lot of battle magics, but nothing that was really like outside of battle. So I picked up suggestion. So we'll see how that goes.
I'm excited to hear.
Yeah, it probably will go very poorly.
But yeah, I mean, that was always my thought is, you know, if magic has some real crazy consequences, you know, maybe it makes a person think twice before casting that spell. So
Yeah, and I think if memory serves, when we were talking about a similar topic, I think Call of Cthulhu has some rules about using magical things or artifacts and stuff that might be able to port over if you're looking for like, yeah, magic's cost is like, do you stay sane?
Yeah, that was a sanity tracker, right?
Yeah, there's some kind of like sanity thing, and I'd have to like actually read the rules because it's been a while. But yeah, that's also another option.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, this I feel like one of our main things that we can always go back to, like if you ever listen to Phantom Roulette, there's like one piece of advice that we can always say in the tabletop section, which is this is why a session 0 is important.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so like if there's a person who's like just hell bent on playing a sorcerer because they want to just shoot crazy magic fireballs and things like that, obviously, like, you explain your concept about low magic, and maybe you make amends because this person really wants to play this, or you really make them understand that magic works differently than they might work in other games that they've played. I think it's, once again, it's important to establish with your players and your party your expectations of the campaign, or rather where you're coming from, your thought process behind these things.
Exactly, and that's why. And side tip, it's kind of like session 0, but for our secondary campaign, I basically elevator pitched 3 concepts.
Yeah.
For my party that Joe is in, and we, there was a wartime campaign where it was going to be kind of their, like I said earlier, there was it was a gritty, bloody, long war, and they were basically going to, live in that, that kind of wartime mumbo jumbo, and see how far they could get up the ranks and live, and fight for their side of the war, and maybe even find out that maybe they're not on the right or wrong side, like all those kinds of things. And then I had the current campaign, which is our kind of X-Files campaign, where they are basically they are members of the local law enforcement of this giant super city, where they're basically trying to figure out, hunt, and basically keep the peace among the local people from monsters and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one was a pirate campaign, which I know Joe really wanted to do, but we just didn't get the traction that we wanted.
And the fun thing is I had characters for all of them, but...
yeah, and like elevator pitching ideas and like letting people know, like even before session 0, so people know what to like expect, you will probably have less conflict, or at least be able to like come up front and be like, hey, let's make some tweaks, or, finding compromise.
Yeah, for sure. As always, you never prevent anyone from being what they want, because then they're not going to have as much fun. So
it's true. You gotta find a good balance.
Yeah. So anything else, or should we wrap her up?
I think that's good. I think we covered no magics.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, there, guys, thank you so much for listening to Phantom Roulette. As always, please go back to the middle section to learn about our social media, about where you can find information about our what platforms and programs we're on. Please like, rate, review, subscribe if you are on any of the podcasters that have those kinds of ratings metrics. Please tell a friend, pass it along. Get the word out there, get the links, get the hits, get the clicks, what have you. This is a labor of love, or it's not a labor. We do this for fun, and we love sharing our opinions, our thoughts, yada 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 with you guys. Yeah. So signing off for Phantom Roulette. This is Joe,
and I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy,
stay super nerdy.